And we are live, okay?
All right.
Welcome to the Juneteenth edition of the Hoodoo Q&A. My name is Shaun Laveau. I am the moderator and the host for the show. And today I am so excited to have with us a special guest, someone who is very near and dear to my heart, um, my dear friends, uh, my spiritual family, Malika Hadley of the Healing Legacy, and she is joining us from one of our heart cities, New Orleans. Malika, how are you doing tonight?
I am wonderful and very, very excited. And yes, thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure to have you on the show. Um, so as we at this being the Juneteenth edition of the Hoodoo Q&A, I thought it was
Ashe.
yes, Ashe. Um, our topic for tonight very much reflecting that it is the Juneteenth season. I thought that this would be a great time for us to do prayers and give thanks to the ancestors because we will be talking about the ancestors of this practice today. So
Okay.
um, Malika and I have both have a little ancestral prayer that we are going to open up with. And as this is Malika is the guest on the show, I will allow Malika to begin, and then I will follow Malika with a ceremonial chant and a candle lighting. All right,
All right.
Malika, it's all you.
All right. I would like to begin with a prayer that came to me probably around the age of 14, which is when I first started praying to the moon. And of course, I thought I had invented it. Don't worry about it. And it began like so. Gods, goddesses, and ancestors, thank you for all that you have given me, all that you have bestowed upon me. Please keep my family, my loved ones, and all those in need. Please continue to shield us from hypocrisy and lead us in your light. Ashe and amen.
Ashe and amen. Thank you so much, Malika, for those words of healing. I hope those words radiate throughout the universe. Um, I am going to do a ancestral prayer that I was taught um, by the ancestors. And when I first heard this prayer, because there is a backstory to it. I was watching. Um, I was watching. Who was I watching? Not Queen Latifah. I was watching Monique. Oh my God. I was watching
Hmm.
Monique, and she won a Grammy for her role in Precious, and it was off of what she said in Precious that I began to hear this prayer in my head. So this is a prayer of thanks for the ancestors. I give thanks and praise unto the ancestors that fought so I did not have to fight. I give
Ashe.
thanks and praise unto the ancestors that struggled so I would have no struggles. I give
Ashe.
thanks and praise unto the ancestors that went without so I could have all. I give thanks and
Ashe.
praise unto the ancestors that keep us day by day. I give thanks and praise unto the ancestors that endured so I would have no suffering. I give thanks and praise unto the ancestors, for they are the reason that we are. I give thanks and praise
Ashe.
unto the ancestors. Ashe and amen.
Ashe and amen.
And we especially send Ashe and amen to the ancestors, both black and queer, but especially the black queer ancestors, because if anybody knows how hard they was holding down both sides of the struggle, we know how hard they were holding down both sides of the struggle. Um,
Indeed.
so we just want to make sure that everyone is aware that we have ancestors that are watching us, that are caring for us, and that we need to make sure are present parts of our prayer life. And that being said, I'm now going to light the white candle of the ancestors. And in the lighting of this white candle of the ancestors, let it be known that with the light of this candle present, the wisdom and the ashe of the ancestors is present as well.
Ashe.
Ashe. May the light always be present. May their wisdom always be present. May their love always be present.
Ashe.
Ashe. So, first of all, that was a beautiful opening prayer, Malika. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Um, and after having done our opening prayer and our opening ceremony, I do think it's time for us to introduce the topic for tonight.
All right.
Tonight's topic is going to be a discussion on the legacy of healing in the African American community and a legacy of healing in the African or the SGL or the Black queer community. Um, and I'm very excited to have this discussion with all people, with all people, but especially with Malika, because Malika has most definitely experienced what we are going to be talking about tonight. Malika, just tell people how you would know a little bit about like why do you think that I chose you to be the
Okay.
guest on this particular topic?
Okay. Well, I believe that I was chosen first and foremost because the name of my business is Legacy Healing. Um, and that was actually the name of my business was given to me by Dr. G Love. In a session we were having, I came to her in 2000. Well, we met in 2011 and performing burlesque in New Orleans under the name of the Hottentot Venus. So Sarah Bartman, reclamation of the name of Sarah Bartman, the South African slave purchased by the French and put on display. And her history is kind of horrific. And I took on her name as a reclamation. And when I introduced myself to Dr. G Love as the Hottentot Venus, she immediately forged our relationship and told me she expected me to be back in New Orleans the next weekend for Ma'afa. And so that is when I started my relationship with New Orleans in general. And then a year later, I came to see her and I was broken. I'd been broken. My mother passed of cancer in 2000 and 2007, October 14th. And when we're talking about Black and queer ancestors, I will call her as she would want to be called, which is Black and lesbian. Okay. She was not of the generation where we're here for the queerness. Okay. She's like, I get it. It ain't deep. All right. It's like, y'all putting the A on the end of nigga. You ain't allowed to say that in my house either. And so she was Black and lesbian. I was raised in a Black lesbian household. And I was also raised very empowered and also physically abused. And that will go into further some of the conversations that we're going to have today. And one of the things that Dr. G Love said to me, I came to her, I said, here's some money. She said, it's my day off. You lucky I love you. But I don't know what I need. And I didn't realize she was channeling until afterward, but she basically cussed me up, down, and sideways. And she was just like, listen, your mother needed to die. She was like, she needed to die. Do you think she didn't know that she was abusing the person she loved the most? Do you think that that was not feeding her cancer? And she said, your work is legacy healing. Because the people who traumatized my mother were West Indian. That was her foster family. And so what Dr. G Love said, she said, boo, I ain't mad at you. If you don't care about them, you don't even want to think about them. She was like, but just for a second, for them to be West Indian in Harlem and to do the things that they did to your mother, what kind of trauma do you think they had been through? And she said, your calling is legacy healing, down trauma that we're talking about. So very long answer, but hopefully a good one.
No, and I very much do think that those are the things that we are talking about today. We're talking about healing legacies and families because as Black people and as queer Black people, it has to stop somewhere. And a truth of being Black in America is a lot of the times our ancestors that were being abused violently and horrifically were being abused by their fathers. That's just the truth. We can take that all the way back to the plantation. They were being abused by their fathers on the plantation. So when we talk about legacy, when we talk about the legacy of healing, to me, it talks about ending the cycle. And that means ending the cycle in a multitude of ways. For example, my family has a cycle of negativity, a negative depression, a negative energy about them. I decided to be the ending of that legacy. That was my way of healing the community, healing my family. So when we talk about legacy healing, what do we really talk about? What are your what does that mean to you? And what are we really talking about?
Well, um, one of my biggest influences in the work that I do is by Dr. Joy DeGruy. So that's post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Mm, that's a good
She
one.
has coined it is. She has coined the pathology PTSS, and it's like we've all heard of PTSD, right? Post-traumatic disorder, right?
Hmm.
And in order for you to be diagnosed with any of the pathologies in the DSM-5, you have to have three or more of the attributes in their list of like usually around 10 or more. So for most people of color, we have to PTSD, like way beyond three, way beyond five, like we're traumatized. And we know that we're meant slavery, but we're tired of saying it. People are tired of hearing it. And we even sometimes think that it's a cop out, right? Um, that's because we don't have the specific instances to actually hold it up and say this caused this specifically. And so I pulled this quote specifically from the book where it says, "What is legacy? How is it transmitted? The legacy of trauma is reflected in many of our behaviors and our beliefs." And then she goes on to say, um, most of us raise our children upon how we ourselves upon how we ourselves were raised. What do you think gets passed down through generations if what was experienced were lifetimes of abuse at the hands of slave masters and other authorities? What do you think the result would be if generation after generation of young men were not allowed the power and authority to parent their own children? What do you think the result would be if education was prohibited for generations? And what do you think the result would be if the primary skills that mothers teach their children are those associated with adapting to a lifetime of torture? And that to me is what has happened. And that's why for me, one of the biggest issues that comes to mind all the time when we're talking about legacy healing is healing our relationship with corporal punishment with our kids.
Mm.
Now, that's a touchy subject for us,
Now
largely
wait a
because
second. Wait a second though, because I have to. This is where I have to interject too, because you and I are going to have some really strong disagreeing points on corporal punishment. Now, you and I might agree in some places as people that have both been exposed to corporal punishment as it being a form of discipline for us, but we will also have different opinions in the sense that I've witnessed corporal punishment being used on other children and witnessed what the lack of corporal punishment on other children is. So this is going to be an interesting discussion now, but I'm gonna let you. I'm gonna let you finish now. I'm gonna do a Kanye. Okay, you can finish now.
okay. So for me, it was always brought to me basically that the reason you got your ass whooped in your home was so that it didn't happen in the street by the police, right? That's that life or death. I'm gonna check you here so you don't end up dead out there. All right, that's real. Um, that is also connected to the whole statement about mothers raising their children to survive in like a life of complete terror. When that is how you are raising your children, you are perpetuating the life of complete terror. I was in a documentary with my mother when I was 17, made by one of her students called Mothers and Daughters. And to Dr. G Love and saying, I know you can't tell. I was like, I know you can't tell that anything was happening. You know what I'm saying? That she was like, beating the brakes off of me by watching us in this movie. And Dr. G said, no, what I see, she was like, I can see it clearly. She said, she's raising a warrior. And she was like, and during that time, that's all she knew to give you. But now is the time for healing through light. You know what I'm saying? Like my mother had to literally stay alive through horrific She wasn't supposed to make it, period. All right. And so then she has me. She got out through education, was a professor of Africana Studies, Women's Studies, Theater, Drama, Film, and Queer Studies. All right. And then she has this little privileged child here who just knows that she's going to go to college. My grades were terrible, but I knew I was going to college because of how I came up. I took everything for granted. And that's because I was raised privileged in that way. Now, her frustration with me was largely carried out through physical discipline. But here's the difference with meetings, and I didn't even learn this until I was 24 and I was dating a clinical psychologist. And she told me, you're not supposed to physically discipline children while you are angry. The objective is not to beat out your anger on the child. The objective is to pop them. There's supposed to be a connection. You did this. We're going to have this negative, you're supposed to get a spanking. And it's supposed to be a connection between those two things. You are not supposed to beat the child until you get exhausted, until your anger is worn out. And that is my experience. And that is the experience of a lot of people. Like, we talk about the beatings that happen with every syllable that's said is a landed blow. And we joke about it, and it's funny, it's cute until is it necessary on that level? Now, I will say for my mother that there were times, I remember her at least 3 or 4 times going for a walk so that she wouldn't kill me. Go for a walk because she knew she was too through angry. Now, mind you, the things that she was through and angry about were usually grades. I wasn't in the streets doing anything. I wasn't a, quote, bad kid. It could be argued I wasn't a bad kid because I knew that she would beat the brakes off of me. So that's the other, you know what I'm saying? That's the difficult balance that we're trying to strike. Now, she made it so I was going to one of the top 10 public school systems in the country, Brookline, Massachusetts. That's a Jewish suburb of Boston. She told me, your little white friends are going to go through their little shoplifting phase. I don't want you in stores with them. No, you're not allowed to hang out. Yes, they can hang out. You can't hang out. Because they going to steal something, you going to get blamed, and the outcome is going to be different. And so it's, the paradox. I don't know that I'm really answering the question, but don't have to hit your children. I have met children of color who have not been hit, who are now adults, were never hit, turned out to be good human beings. On the other hand, I also taught in the Atlanta public school system for 12 years. I'm not confused. Yes. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, what I have to say is, from my perspective, when we talk about hitting children, first of all, because we got to address this before I can move forward with the healing, with what legacy healing means to me. Excuse me. When we talk about hitting children, all right, we have to understand that discipline is different for every child and every person, and how we give out discipline is going to be different for every child, and how every person feels discipline and works is going to be different for every child. But what I want to say is that I think that you made exactly the points that I would make if I were, coming from your perspective. The legacy is what we hand on to our children, what we received from our grandparents, from what our parents received from our grandparents, they hand on to us. And some of our grandparents or their caretakers or whatever they want to call themselves, they didn't give our parents nothing but ass whoopings. Excuse my way of saying it, but that's how we gonna say it, because this is having a
this is us,
right? This is how that's nothing but that's what they gave our parents. On the other side of that, I would say this too, though. When we talk about healing legacy, I think that it's when we as a child, or not even as a child, but as a witness to our surroundings, and really witnessing our surroundings, understand that there is something on our family. In the olden days, they used to call it a generational curse.
Yep.
But as I've come to realize, there is no such thing as a generational curse, but it's just an energy that is passed on. It is a part of our legacy. It's passed on from our grandparents to our parents, and our parents pass it on to us. And so when you talk to me about legacy healing, and I tell this about, and I believe in generational curses. Don't get it twisted. But when you talk to me about this, I have to say, was because to me, a generational curse comes from outside the family. Okay, it
Okay.
comes from somebody who had a vendetta against somebody that was in the family, and then they put something on the family or the bloodline or the generations to come after that person. When we talk about things that are operating specifically inside the family energy, and you can see that it's happening. It's not just happening to this straight line of DNA. It's
Mm-hmm.
not flowing from father to child to son to his son to his son, but you see it in your cousins and your aunts and how they deal with everybody. That means that there's a legacy energy there behind that.
Absolutely.
So, and when we say that there's a legacy energy behind that, you as the next, as the next heir and the next to give on the legacy, have to say, this is where I'm going to change or rewrite what the legacy of this family is, the legacy of who we are is. And the legacy of who we are as Black people is one that needs to be rewritten, especially
Say
in this
that.
time, especially in this time, because we as Black people have inherited a legacy that was not for us in the first place, but it was given to us by white people who got the idea from Willie Lynch. And I'm talking about the legacy of separation. We're so separate. We're so distant from one another. We're so different from one another. And so something that I want to tell people, something that I want people to really understand is that something that I really want people to understand is that are not we are not separate. We should come together. We should heal ourselves and our community because those things are so important to us. Our legacy needs to be carried out with light, with love, and with positivity.
Indeed.
I agree with you in all the aspects that you made, all the points that you made about child raising, all the points that you made about child care. But I want to get back to the question.
Okay.
When I say it's time for healing your legacy as a
Mm-hmm.
family, or healing the legacy that you come from, and the legacy that you'll give on to your children someday, what
Mm-hmm.
does that mean to you?
First and foremost, an attempted end to corporal punishment.
Ooh.
For me, that is, and me and my partner have discussed this, and it's interesting because the way that she describes it is totally different. Because what she said to me, she said, "You can pop them legs though." And that's totally different. I don't even think I consider that corporal punishment. You see what I'm saying? Like
Right.
my legs weren't popped. Okay, I was hit with a belt. Even find out till I was an adult. I wasn't hit with a double belt. I was hit with a belt that was wrapped around my mother's fist, and the end was open, so it was like a whip, back skin. All
Um,
right.
the,
I, I was my mother. I remember once she punched me in the mouth so hard that she split her finger on my braces. Um, and this is because now. Let's be real. Now we're talking about legacy healing. We're talking about trauma. My mother was a Black woman in academia. Start and stop there. All right. Academia has like historically killed Black women. And speaking of which, I wanted to speak to one of the things you just said with an Audre Lorde quote. Another Black woman who passed of cancer and was an academic, and she said, "It is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences." And Audre Lorde was, the queen of intersectionality. So she said Black, lesbian, warrior, educator, writer, etc. She was all of those things. And so I wanted to invoke her into the conversation. But for me, first and foremost, in repairing my legacy, praise of our children is important. And Dr. Joy DeGruy speaks to that as well. She talks about you see Black Johnny and you see White Johnny in the bank. White Johnny hanging upside down off of the counter and whatever. And Black Johnny knows better. And if he doesn't know better, Black Johnny knows that if Black Johnny mama ain't watching, some other woman of color is watching. Like we're watching, right? And she said, now why is this, the case? Well, there's kids. Black Johnny's already been raised to know that's not for you. freedom is not for you. Now, of course, when freedom looks foolish to us like that, like, you know, we're just like, no, it's not for him. But that transcends just acting a fool in public. It means you stay small, you stay quiet. And she went on to talk about how White Johnny's mother will praise White Johnny. She might even praise Black Johnny to Black Johnny's mother. What will Black Johnny's mother say? Black Johnny's mother will say, yes, he's smart, but he's so bad. Like, he is so bad. Like, I can't, you know, whatever, do nothing with him, whatever. Where does that come from? It comes from you want people to see that your child was special or gifted because they would be sold or worked into the ground or both. And so we continue that. My own mother, I always knew that I was everything. Okay. Like the way that I was raised, like I inherently felt bad for people who weren't Black and female because I knew that they could only be but so magical. Like I wasn't told that in so many words, but that was the message. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't know. I didn't know that everyone didn't grow up being told, you know, that being Black and female was like the best thing that you could ever be. But the flip side is my mother was very critical of me. Now, the interesting thing is I also feel like, and so when she passed, her friends would tell me, you know, your mom was really proud of you. She was in awe of you, all these things that I always knew she was proud of me. I never thought she was ashamed of me, but like the level of praise that apparently I was getting, you know, in the company of other people was not what I was receiving from her. Being told you're not really a musician. Don't think I didn't know that you got that scholarship, not by actually singing, but by writing an essay. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what I was getting. And what everybody else is getting is, my child got multiple scholarships. You know what I'm saying? This, that, and the other thing. And when I heard Dr. Joy DeGruy talk about it, it's inherent in us. And that's another quote that Audre Lorde had that I pulled about learning to love again and be gentle, because we feel like being gentle. Audre Lorde said we have to consciously study how to be tender with each other until it becomes a habit, because what was native has been stolen from us, the love of Black women for each other. And I think that that goes down the line. And so for me, the biggest part of healing my legacy, I was raised to be outspoken. But the biggest part of healing my legacy is to end the violent part, end the violence verbally and physically.
And I think that all of that being said, you spoke to a huge part of healing the community in general. Because I, as a person that has worked with children in a mentoring aspect, because, you know, a lot of parents come to me and they say, you are so wise. Give that wisdom to my Black child and help them to survive. I have to tell y'all about some things. You know, people come to me and they say, you know, my child doesn't do this, they don't do that, and I want them to do as you do. I can't give to your child what was given to me, because it wasn't really even given to me. I had to discover it in myself. I had to discover that I wanted to begin the legacy of healing in myself. I had to begin that I wanted to stop a cycle here and start a new cycle there. The legacy healing, when we really discuss legacy healing, you have to understand that we're talking about ending of cycles that have continued on for generations and generations and maybe even centuries. 300 plus years of centuries, possibly. You know what I'm saying? Speaking to what you just spoke on, you know, not talking up our child, not speaking on the good that our child does. That is a 300 plus year old legacy that we need to break. We need to be able to reward, give praise and thanks to our community. And then we also need to take that a step further, because not just to our community, but we need to give it on to the next generation. Because if we show the next generation, this is how we do it. This is what we should do. We haven't done it, but this is what we should do. They'll take those traditions into mind and into concept and continue on. I also want to discuss, when I talk about legacy healing, I want to talk about how we as people have kept our spiritual practices alive. Now wait, because Now wait, because we're gonna have, and this is gonna lead us into our second half of the discussion on queer healing.
Yeah.
So we really have to talk about this because
Okay.
I want to talk about how we have kept our practices alive. I gotta take off the jewelry for this, y'all. I gotta take off the
Uh,
bracelets. Let me
oh,
take
okay.
off the rings. It's gonna get serious.
Mhm.
It's going
Mhm.
to get serious.
Mhm.
Um, when we discuss healing and how we've kept our practices alive, we have to understand that our healing is a part of, first of all, it is a part of our legacy. And which means that it was handed down to us from generation to generation to generation. But what
Mhm.
we also have to understand is that in our healing, it also comes from specific places of hurt and specific places of pain. Um, so what we have to understand is that the reason that we have some of the works and some of the spiritual paths and practices, and especially when you turn to hoodoo, when you talk about that, some of the reasons we have things like law keep away, things hot foot magic and protection spells and things like that, those come from legacies of hurt. you know they come from legacies of, I don't want to have to worry about the police knocking on my door, so let me have
Mhm.
this spiritual work that keeps that away.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that, and I don't think that those things are things that we as legacy healers can fix. But what I do think is that we as legacy healers can change the mundane world to make it so that that is not so prevalent. And
Mhm.
the perfect example of that is we're right now in a time where Black Lives Matter. You might not want to say it, they might not want to say it, but we have to say it. But somebody, it has to be said somewhere. So let me get up on my spiritual soapbox and yell on the internet, in person, in private, and anywhere else that Black Lives Matter.
Mhm.
And yelling Black Lives Matter and us doing it in front of the next generation, the next legacy, we will
Mhm.
start to see them say Black Lives Matter, my life matters, what we
Mhm.
do matters. Because as you just said, for a long time we couldn't talk about the stuff that we did. We weren't giving credit legally. We weren't giving credit privately. And if we did get credit, that credit probably resulted in some type of backlash, some type of hurt and pain that made us really not want to take credit for the good deed that we've done. So, but that's not the time that we live in anymore. We live in a time now where we should take credit for what's ours. This
Indeed.
computer that y'all watching me on, that was invented by a Black person. Stay woke. Um,
You did not say stay woke. We're done
I
here.
did say stay woke. It just is. I mean, we have to talk about these things. We have to stay woke too. Don't think that me stay woke was a joke. We have to stay spiritually woke. We have to stay mentally woke. We have to be spiritually conscious and mentally conscious. We can't accept what they're feeding us and hope that that's going to be what we can use to change our legacy. We're talking
So
about. We're,
here's sorry. Go ahead,
I
love.
have to say that. I just have to say this before
Yeah. Yeah.
I hand it over to you. Because, and the reason why we have to stay spiritually, mentally, physically conscious is because these are people that literally have a hard time giving us a month out of 12. We're asking for 1 month to celebrate us. Y'all get 11 other ones. We want 1 month to celebrate us. And y'all have an issue with that? And it's the shortest month of the year.
I
We
was
have
about
to
to
stay
say. Mhm.
we have to stay woke consciously, because when they teach our children their history as a part of curriculum, but teach our history as an elective, or when you can take Irish dance, and that's perfectly fine. But when they hear about hip hop ballet, they want to fall out in chairs. We have to stay woke because though we can't change the world with the things that they want to give us in terms of education and knowledge and power. We have to stay woke because if we relied on what they gave us to eat, we'd all be skinny as hell. That just is, and I don't do skinny. I'm a full
I was about to
figure.
say, and then I would be single because
Right.
my sweetheart don't do. Mm-mm.
I am
Mm-mm.
voluptuous. Pretty in the face, cute in the waist. That is me. So, and that's how
Oh,
I
good Lord.
maintain that by staying conscious and woke,
Hmm.
being mentally fed, spiritually fed, because that keeps me physically fed. All right. That being said, I want to hand it over to Malika because she looked like she had some really strong comments on what I had to say.
Well, largely because when I hear the word, the reason why I said don't say, I said you didn't just say stay woke, is because what we need to really be woke about is who we're listening to in our own circles.
Ooh,
Because all these hoteps out
well,
here, all these hoteps walking around talking about being woke and that homosexuality was brought by the Europeans. No one has time. Let me tell you about the conversations I have heard out of my own black and Jewish business at Dunkin' Donuts. Okay, the conversation I overheard, and it was like two black men, and one of them was talking about how homosexuality was brought by the Europeans to Africa. I hadn't heard this. Apparently, I'm late. Apparently, this has just been what the hoteps have been spewing. All right. So homosexuality was brought by the white man to stop us from procreating, and that's the only reason. It's the fact that we became integrated, that we're in this lifestyle and all this other stuff. And the dude listened to him, and he didn't even sound intelligent. Some of the hoteps actually, like, you can get caught up because they sound like they might know what they talk about. This one didn't even sound like that. And the other thing was like, you know what? You just gave me a lot to think about right now. And this dude said, brain, brother, you got to use your whole mind brain. I was like, I just wanted to drop my latte and walk out. But I paid for it. As previously said, I'm Jewish, so we don't do that. But I was just like, I cannot with you all. So when you said stay woke, I had a reaction, and it was because I associate that with the tomfoolery, okay, that we have.
But then you bring up another issue in the legacy of healing, because if we don't know if we really don't know our history, we'll accept anything as our history. So when a bunch of bigoted hoteps get together and say, you know what, for the longest time, homosexuality was a practice by the Greeks and the Romans. So it must have spread through Europe. And then when Europeans invaded Africa, it became a thing in Africa. But really, the truth is that if you really acknowledge Kemetic practices, and you're talking to somebody who studied Kemetic practices for a very long time, if you really study Kemetic practices in the history of Kemet, you understand that many temples show the intimacy between a man and another man, and between a woman and another woman. So, I mean, hoteps are really contradicting their own history, because what would you say?
Always.
Like, literally, what if I brought those? What do they say when you bring those pictures to them? Oh, well, a lot of these pictures have been changed by the Europeans.
Yep.
You telling me, hold on a second. You telling me that the Europeans came in and carved all this stuff on the wall? You telling me that they went that far to make homosexuality look like it was a thing in Africa? Like, y'all just doing the most. So here's my thing about it. When you stay
so why we stay woke?
When you are really woke and conscious, you won't, because let's just be honest, you can't trust everybody that's this skin color, that's that's black. You can't trust everybody's information. But also staying woke is a part of the spirit of discernment. And that's another part of the healing legacy. We have to teach our children to have a spirit of discernment and truth. We have to teach our children that this is where my aunt lies, and this is where my aunt lies. This is not where we go. This is not what we do. The healing legacy tells us that we have to pass on information to our children. And it teaches us that we have to pass on the best information to our children. Because in my personal vision of how the ancestors are going to grade us on our life, they're going to grade us on how well did we teach generations and teach our brothers and sisters and teach one another and care for one another. So when I say stay woke, I mean stay woke against everybody, because I know, Malika, what you just explained in your story, I've experienced myself.
I know you have.
Groups of black people, spiritual black people, just sitting around talking foolishness, and I'm just like, y'all, is anybody gonna research this? Anybody gonna do fact checks? We just gonna accept alternative facts from the black folks now? Like, I just can't. So when I say stay woke, We, when I say stay woke, I mean stay woke. Stay conscious of what you're hearing and what you're allowing to feed your mind, your body, and your soul. Because what he just fed that boy was some empty ass calories. What the fuck would you? I just was so I was dumb listening. I was dumb for listening to the story about you listening to it. I just can't even. I can't even. I was dumb for listening to a story about you listening to a story. That's just how I feel about the whole thing. So anyway, let us go on to this discussion because we have to first of all pay our minds because when I talk about legacy healing, I want to talk about the true healers in our community. Okay, now Malika, you are in New Orleans, baby. You know how we feel about New Orleans, home of the great Queen Marie Laveau and all of her spectacular works. But I feel like when we talk about legacy healing, a lot of what we do is I'm gonna step on so many toes when I say this. A lot of us we would rather go outside of our own bloodline. No, we would rather go outside of our own bloodline to find the healers and the healing instead of staying inside of the legacy, staying inside of the trade. That being said, I want to know how you feel about, excuse me, when it comes to doing legacy healing. And I'm talking to you. I'm speaking this to you as a Reiki healer as well, because we're going to talk about how Reiki is brought into this. Doing Reiki work on ancestors and on healing the ancestors through that path and causing healing through that. Because there are Reiki symbols to send healing into the past, into the present, and into the future. I want to get your ideas and your thoughts about putting Reiki on the ancestors in order to heal these blocks. And I think that we should talk a little bit about what Reiki is first, because keeping it true to what this show is. This show is about Black healing, and Reiki is not a Black practice.
Okay. Let me just with the Reiki. Okay, so I'm up to my level 2 attunement with Dr. G Love. 5 Directions Wellness. That's where I got my first 2 attunements from, and I intend to complete 3 and 4, which will then allow me to go forth and attune people. This is my take on Reiki. Black folk been laying hands since the beginning of time. I got attuned so that I'd have the credentials behind my name. I would learn the symbols, etc. But to me, that's where we've gone to, where it's like you need the credentialing. So
wait a second, because for me, I have to talk. Wait, because credentials are the white man's license. Why are you walking from this plantation to that plantation? I got the credentials to do so, sir.
So now this is how G Love broke it down to me, okay? Because she's the one who encouraged me to finish my master's degree when I wanted to walk away from it. She said that her master's degree is what opens doors for her to go into places that they don't want her to be, but they don't find out until too late. To me, it's a necessary credential. Go on and get that. And then you've got the paradox of we got a lot of charlatans, right? So after, like, I had friends that were teasing me and was like, when Beyonce dropped Lemonade, they were like, boo, you need to go ahead and make my first EFA home kit, because you know that these ratchets out here are about to be like, yes, Lemonade, and they don't know. And it occurred to me, like, how easy it would be, Shaun. So easy, because people just want to buy. They want to buy. So that's where credentials are important.
So let me ask you a question. Are you saying, we just got to get this, we got to talk about credentials for a second. Just for a second. Are you saying that when you get initiated into an African spiritual path, that now the priest should start handing out paperwork saying you did it, here's your certificate to call yourself a practitioner of this religion?
Now, I feel that credentials for us usually come down through oral history and reputation. Those are still credentials.
Yes.
Who are your people? That's what we call credentials. Who your people? That's how I know whether or not I really need to mess with you. And it also, we got to be careful with that because sometimes your people may not be indicative of who you are.
Mm.
So that's where you got to stop and, listen and make the connections. So for me, in order to open doors for,
And then also, I would just like to say, when your people are not indicative of who you are, that's when you know that you are the healer of the healing,
yes,
of that healing legacy of that family and of that name. I'm just gonna
and
put
that's
that out
real. And that's real. But for me, I just needed largely because I think I was telling you that when I received, so my first initiation ever I received was from G Love. And she just told me to go forth and do what I do. From that point, we literally walked to Mardi Gras Zone to pick up, what was it? We were getting champagne and chocolate to celebrate, okay? And someone needed healing.
there.
Somebody was sitting in Mardi Gras Zone who needed healing.
Yes, champagne chocolate.
G, while she did this healing, oh, we had a great time. And I just held space. And she was just like, I said, I wasn't sure. Afterwards, I said, I wasn't sure what you had wanted me to do. And she said, you did exactly what I wanted you to do, which is why I told you to just do what you do. So for me, I'm a Virgo. I don't know what that means. So I'm going to need some steps. Okay. And she said, well, how about this? We'll attune you. You can join my Reiki attunement classes. We'll attune you. And for me, that gave me language for what I was doing. And also, one thing that credentials do offer is a vehicle for understanding. It's the quickest distance between 2 points. So depending on the person I'm having a conversation with, I may just identify as a lesbian. Sense to you. And so it's like for the purposes of what this person needs to know, I'm a lesbian. All right. Now, if I'm talking to a lesbian in the community, I'll say that I'm queer because there is a difference. But it's like a quickest distance between 2 points. So you need healing, I'm a Reiki. That's what we're going to call it because you understand.
And I understand that. Okay. So back to the topic of Reiki on the ancestors.
Yes.
Because when we talk about Reiki, in my personal opinion, that is an energy healing. That is laying hands. Can we put Reiki? Can we put Reiki on our ancestors? Is that something that we can do?
If we're talking about setting energy, absolutely. And that was also important because one of the most important elements to legacy healing for me is not being closed to whatever may help. So for me, that means holistic as well as Western medicine as needed. And it was my therapist who actually told me after I met with G Love, she was the one who told me, Malika, she said, you don't even just clean this up for you and those who come after. You can go back and clean this up for your mother and her people. And so that's exactly what she was speaking to. So it was my therapist that told me, took the legacy healing further for me about going back and healing it for the ancestors. So absolutely we can send Reiki. Are they going to understand it as Reiki? Like, are they here for the Japanese symbols for the Indian healing, the chakra healing? The chakras are Indian and the Reiki is Japanese and we're African. Like, they speak all of it. So I think like wherever it is, however you going to come to them, if they want to meet you, they going to meet you. But call it what it is energy. I call it Reiki because it's the quickest distance between 2 points.
Now, we have talked about legacy healing for a long time. And I just want to end up, because I'm going to end this section of the discussion and we're going to move on to the next topic because our time is running real short with you, Malika, and I've loved having you on the show. How I'm going to end this is by saying as young people and as the next generation, future mothers, future fathers, having this spiritual practice and this spiritual belief, we need to do one thing. We need to heal what's broken in our families. And know what the cycle is, learn to identify the cycle, and then decide that you're going to break the cycle. If the cycle is substance abuse, if the cycle is physical abuse, if the cycle is verbal abuse, if the cycle is having children and you really don't want children, if the cycle is settling in love, whatever the cycle is, find it and break it because the future generations will be better off for it. Our families get so stuck in living in what they would call tradition that they don't realize that the tradition is not beneficial and conducive to the type of lifestyle that they really want us to live.
Yes.
and B, that it's not even conducive to being free Americans. And I don't care what we say about what America was meant for us. We're free now. They might not want us to be free. They might try to impose whatever they want, but we free, and we should live like we free at
Say
all
that.
costs.
All right.
So moving on to the next subject, I want to talk about queer healing and African American SGL Black queer healing and us as healers in the community. Because here's the truth about it: if we gonna talk about queer, if we gonna talk about being Black healers, you know, aside from what that hotel brother said at the Starbucks or whatever,
No one has time.
what the truth is that gay people, black or white, have always had a definite connection to spirit because they've been able to balance that masculine and feminine energy and flow through those effortlessly. So what we need to talk about right now, gender role assignment and how that
All right.
decreases the power of healing and especially for us as queer and Black healers. And Malika, and I'm gonna say this first. This is before I discuss this, before me and Malika really started on this topic. I'm gonna say this: when you look at some of the stories of some of the most powerful African spirits there are, they have a masculine and a feminine side.
Feminine. Say that.
They have appearance in both masculine and feminine energy. So for you to sit up and say that homosexuality or transgender energy is not present in Africa, just because we don't have any proof that it was present in humans, it was most definitely present in their spiritual beliefs because some of the same spirits that we refer to as male also have female sides, and a majority of their aspects are female. So I want to know, Malika, because Malika, you have most definitely had a very interesting experience with gender assignment and gender role and what gender plays in your life. So I want you to tell a little bit of people about what you experienced with that, and we're going to just talk about that for a little while because that's a deep topic too. You know, understanding the balance between feminine and masculine in every individual person, not just in the community as one, but in every individual person is a very powerful thing. So please do speak on it, Malika.
All right. Well, I was raised once again in a primarily female household. All right. So some of the work that I've been challenged to do, and I've got to say that I've been neglecting it a little bit, surprise. But also that my wonderful therapist told me to do. She asked me what my inner child, what my male inner child is up to. And my response was that you don't mean inner child like in that cheesy way. You know what I'm saying? But it's just like, your inner self, like what's going on with the masculine side. I was like, I don't know, little Malik probably done tripped over a block, choked. I don't know. He in there somewhere. And it's because I am very off balance. Like for me, I was raised largely, we're in a very male dominated world, etc. Male gets enough masculinity, gets enough energy. So that means that it's not something that I've really nurtured much in myself. And the funny thing is a lot of my traits that people decide are masculine, to me, I attribute to being a woman because it has everything to do with strength. But what I was going to say is exactly what you said with regard to that, especially when we talk about the Orishas. Like now in Judeo-Christian religions, we like to pay lip service to the fact that God is beyond gender, right? But we know it's him and it's he. And occasionally we might throw in a she, like a cursory, whatever, but it's him and it's he. And people get very uncomfortable. That was not, from all of my studies and all my understanding, that has not been our thing. Now, that's not our thing. So if the Hoteps want a piece of something to run around and talk about was brought to Africa and they brainwashed us about that gender piece, I would say that that's largely European. And I would say that because of how the Orishas show up. And not to mention, not only are all of the Orishas androgynous, and yes, usually for most of them, there's one or the other side that we tend to, more often than not, lean to, as far as like we tend to see Oya as woman, we tend to see Shango as male. Now, my mother has a statue. I have her statuette on her altar in the other room of Shango as female. And she also had a necklace with Shango as female, double-sided headdress. She's holding a child on each hip. I didn't know Shango was seen as male most of the time until I grew up and started, studying on my own, etc. But the bottom line is that this whole concept of a rigid gender um, inhibits our magic. It's that simple. Also, when you see how gender plays out between the Orisha, um, when they're battling with each other, it is not at all abnormal. And actually, a lot of times, especially, and as a daughter of Oya, I just have to say it, most of the time, Oya gonna win. Okay? And actually, that's true for most of the female deities. Like, they gonna win. And
I just like to point out that my mother has a beard as well. And those of you that really have studied into the religion understand what that means. But, okay, please continue.
So yeah, absolutely. And actually the bearded woman, that's another conversation that I've learned more and more about as an adult, and also as a queer woman, and understanding more about that specific attribute, but also like metaphorically, when you think about the Orishas and the goddesses, when they choose to show themselves as goddesses and they take down the gods that show themselves as gods, Shango don't look like any less of a man. He doesn't look any less masculine. You know what I'm saying? If you want to look at it like that, it's like they are equal. They're equals. And it's interesting because I think that, even having lived in Kenya for a year, I was very young, I was 10. But living in Kenya, the gender role situation was real. All right, it was real. The mothers, I remember that the mothers, I was in Nairobi, the sons were called daddy, even by the mothers. The sons had, like, we're talking babies, little baby boys. They had more power than the actual mother in the household. But it's interesting because that let what I've learned in my own studies and my own communing with the Orisha and even the ancestors. There hasn't been a hierarchy, and I think that's where gender roles really tend to get us in trouble with our spirituality, is this whole idea of hierarchy, one being higher or more powerful than the other.
I think and I very much do agree with that, because that's where we start to get patriarchy. I took my hair down now. That's where we start to get patriarchy, matriarchy. We start to, and that what creates a divide, because a lot of women who do start to begin to study alternative traditions, they start to learn about Dianic traditions because they've gotten tired of the male deity of the Christian church, and that's very understandable. But the issue with that is that a lot of women take that to an extreme. Like, they feel like men are the lesser of the gender than after they've studied that Dianic tradition, or they become, goddess empowered, and they start to think that men are the lesser of the gender. And, it almost becomes like the Wicker Man. Like, oh, the only reason men are on the island are to procreate and do all the stuff that we really don't want to do. So, and for a long time, we have to acknowledge something, because back in the 80s, there were several, communes, goddess venerating communes, where men were on the communes, but they pretty much live like the Wicker Man. Like, they're not here for anything except procreation and to do the things that we really don't want to do. But I also have to speak on this too, because talking about legacy healing and talking about queer healing, we have to talk about healing the legacy of being queer in the African American community. It gets so deep, because we as black people, we as black people have a stigma behind being queer, and that stigma comes from a multitude of places. From the ones that practice Christianity, they want to believe that it's a sin. From the ones that feel like they're conscious or awoke, they feel like, well, it doesn't happen in nature, so why should we allow it to happen amongst us?
Which is not true.
Wait, because I'm not done right. Because they get more extreme as we go down the list. They get more extreme as we go down the list. Because for the ones that are atheists, well, we never had proof of homosexuality until of the 21st century, and so on and so forth. I literally had someone tell me that the only reason that homosexuality occurs is because of, and Dr. Umar Johnson, who I love to give a shade out to. For those of you that don't know what a shade out is, that means when you throw shade publicly. Dr.
Oh,
Umar Johnson correlated that molestation, made a correlation between homosexuality and molestation. I would like to say this: one in every five American children has no, not one in every five. 3 in every 5 American children have experienced molestation. Uh, two in every five, uh, 2 in every 5 Americans are homosexual. So when you really do the statistics, I mean, are a lot of the kids that are being molested gay? Yes, but they're, if you ask them, they were homosexuals before they had their traumatic experience. They had those tendencies and they had those feelings um, before they had those feelings. And another statistic shows, and other studies and research shows that gay people that were molested are less likely to come out of the closet in a timely manner, whatever a timely manner is, in an ideal time frame is how I would word it that. Because of the fact that they were molested and they feel like their homosexuality will be belittled because of the fact they were molested. Like, oh, somebody touched you, and that must be why the way you are. And a lot of gay people have to face that. So, all of this being said, we need to heal the community. We, as a community, need to do legacy healing on being queer in the community. We need to say that it's okay to be queer, to be gay, to be bi, to be transsexual, to have questions about your sexuality. And I also think we need to do healing around sex in general.
say
I'm
that.
not saying I'm not saying that sex should be a dinner conversation. Like I shouldn't be able to come. A 16-year-old shouldn't be able to come into his family dinner and be like, "I had sex, y'all, and I just had some. I just had to
Yeah,
tell y'all that."
no.
But
Mm-hmm.
it should be a sphere that it should be a sphere that if I need to discuss it as a teenager, or if I need to discuss it with my teenager as a parent, there's not an awkward energy around it. There's not a a stagnant conversation about it. So Malika, I just want to know how you feel about the healing of Black people and the healing of Black queer community and the legacy healing that we need to do around both of those.
Well, with regard to the conversation not being awkward or uncomfortable, I think a big part of the healing is pushing comfortable until it becomes less so. Now, as far as the legacy that I was left with, I was actually left with a very comically positive. I was raised in a very sex positive house.
Now wait a
Um,
second, because this is where, and this is I just have to point this out to people because me and Malika have two greatly different experiences because I grew up with two cisgender, two homosexual, heterosexual parents who never felt the real need to talk to me about homosexuality. They never really wanted to talk about sex, period, because they knew that it might have led to the talk of mom and dad, I'm gay. The one time that my father did make a comment to me, my stepfather did make a comment to me about having sex. He told me, don't bring home any babies. I was like, you don't got to worry about me bringing home anything that comes out of a vagina. And we walked on. We walked on from that conversation. We didn't talk again about it. It was never a thing after that. So so back to what you were saying. You were raised in a sex positive household, whereas sex was a topic because they were afraid of what I was going to have to say about sex.
God, yeah. Yeah, no, my household, it was extremely funny. Now, my father, he's a little traumatized because I refer to him as Victorian. He has some very Victorian predilections towards how young ladies should conduct themselves, and I was pretty much the exact opposite. Now, the funny thing is, I was a virgin till I was 18 because I thought so highly of myself and I had read so many books about I read between the erotica that I was stealing off the back of my mother's bed and Sweet Valley High, which she kept trying to set on fire. I had a very fantasy laden
Oh my god!
concept of what my first time was going to be like. And it didn't include being in somebody's basement, being afraid their mama was gonna come home. Candles, a hotel room, so we had to be old enough to get a hotel room. Okay, candles, like whatever. So all that meant was 18 because mine was gonna be, different. But my mother, first of all, she let me know later on in life. She was like, you weren't stealing anything off the back of my bed, right? Like I was very aware of what was happening, etc. But she was uncomfortable having the conversations, but we were gonna have the conversations. Okay, and it was very cute how she was uncomfortable because she was uncomfortable trying to act like she wasn't uncomfortable. So she was very matter of fact, very professorial about the sex talks. Okay, she showed me when I was 12, we had sex ed in Brookline, and in sex ed in Brookline, and when you're talking about heterosexual, safe sex at that time meant condoms and foam. Foam, I'm not even sure is a thing anymore, but it was like the sponge and like it's spermicide, whatever. But this was the 90s. So I come home and my mother shows me latex gloves and finger condoms. So I was very confused.
Wait a second. She didn't show you the dental dams or
that wasn't a thing like that yet. She told me about it. She did tell me about it. But she showed me the finger condoms, and those were the ones that confused me the most because I really didn't understand why. And so one of my boys told me in high school, he was like, Malika's mama had her thinking she was going to give birth to a thumb. I did not understand.
Wait a second. They tried it. Why was that? That was so not right.
Yes, shout out to my Irish Winter Hill family in Somerville. That's where that came from. Somerville, Massachusetts. But yeah, so she had the conversations with me. I still was unclear on the finger condom thing. But we had the conversation. I started carrying condoms when I was like in 8th grade because that's when Left Eye was where it may she rest in peace. Well, Left Eye had them over her left eye and everything. And my mother had left money for me in my overnight table drawer, and I had the condoms in there. And so she told me later on, she was like, I left some money for you on top of your condoms in your overnight table drawer. So I was like, oh, okay, thank you. And it didn't occur to me that made it look like I was having sex because I told my mother everything, so she would have known if I was having sex. And she did. I told my parents when I was 18 that I was going to go there with my first like real boyfriend. And my father was traumatized, and my mother was worried. Mothers do, because he was in Charlotte and I was in Greensboro, and this is all North Carolina. And so for all intents and purposes, that's a world away when you are 18 with no car. But it was a positive experience, and I think largely, and I picked a good individual, a good person, and I think it's largely because I was raised with such a sex positive household, such an open household, and my mother told me to never believe in the idea that my virtue rested between my legs, and that my worth had anything to do with my sexuality. And so I grew up in a very, very sex positive space like that. Now, her concern for me was that she said that one of the things she admired most in me was one of the things that made her most concerned for me, and that was my disregard for where I was. I am in every space that I'm in, and that is dangerous. And especially as a Black woman, and as you stated, that's not only for when I'm in mixed company. It could be argued I'm always in mixed company with the half Jewish thing, but it's Black to it, and you're in the Black community. That's that don't ask, don't tell. Like, we might be okay with it if you don't bring it up. All right, and then you want to talk about don't ask, don't tell in African traditional religion. Like, you're allowed to be as long as you're quiet about it.
Here's the thing, because we really have to talk about that too, because don't ask, don't tell. Oh, Malika, we cutting it close. You done opened up a can of worms, and you know how I feel about don't ask. We're going to talk about this really briefly, and then we have to cut the show short, y'all. But this is what I have to say. when you talk about don't ask, don't tell in the African traditional religion, you have to talk about it. You have to talk about it as a part of the African American community in general. Okay, just because they're practicing African American, just because they're practicing African religions, and and different sprouts off of those African religions, is still a part of our American and our African American conditioning. Because they have don't ask, don't tell in the church. And first of all, as somebody that grew up extremely immersed in the church every Sunday, part of the choir, fell out and got the Holy Ghost at the age of 4. Homosexuals, choir directors, preachers, deacons, tithing members, non-tithing members, visiting members, looking for a new church home. They came in and out of that place so fast. In my last experience with church, Lord forgive me for this. In my last experience with church, I pulled out my phone, and at the time I had a certain gay dating app on my phone, and I sure did open it in the church, and I saw 3 members and they were active on the app. We were supposed to be reading the Bible. I was like, see,
I'm done.
This is how I know we going to hell in a handbasket. Now listen, the truth is that here's how we do, and this was the question that I was going to ask this question to you, and I'm still going to give it to you to speak on for a little bit. But here's how we do the legacy healing about being queer in the community. We have to talk about it. Don't ask, don't tell is not healing shit. That's just the truth about it. That's like saying what goes on in this house stays in this house.
Stays in this house.
No, what goes on in this house, if it's affecting what I'm doing in my life and where I want to go in my life, I'm going to take it outside of this house. All right?
Yes.
So, Malika, what I want to know from you is what do you think, and how do you think that we heal, that we start the healing in our community and the healing legacy of homosexuality?
It's exactly what you just said. That's actually what I even had down in my notes. One of what I believe that my biggest calling is stories and telling stories. The reason everyone feels so alone and so other is because we're silenced. That's how abuse. I mean, what's the first step to any abusive relationship? You get cut off
Separation
from your people.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so it's abuse. It's getting cut off from our own stories. You don't tell your stories. And it even can sometimes go so far, especially with the don't ask, don't tell, we don't want to make people uncomfortable. Now, I can look at pictures of you and your husband, talking to a cisgendered woman, her and her husband and her family and their vacation. But I want to show you a picture of me and my wife to be, and now I'm shoving it down your throat, right? So because I'm queer, then obviously I'm trying to just force something on you, whereas you can show me a whole accordion photo album out your wallet about y'all's family vacation. And so, and it's interesting because I've even had to check myself on that, because I find myself policing myself. And I was never raised to be in a closet. But sometimes I'll be like, do I need to stop talking about this? Am I making them uncomfortable? Am I just saying this so that they know that I'm gay? No. First of all, I love my boo, and I feel like everyone else should love her too. So I'm going to let everybody know. And she looked good. So we all going to look at pictures. The end. You're welcome. And I feel that in all sincerity, sometimes pushing the envelope, actually always pushing the envelope, being who you are. I remember asking my pastor at First African Church in Lithonia, be all of who you are. You do your best to be all of who you are in every space that you are in. And I said, Pastor Lomax, how long can you do that before your life is ended? And he said, about 33 years, sister.
Okay.
And I said, drop the mic, we're done here. Because Jesus was authentic in every space he was in, and it ended his life.
Okay.
And we have to do that.
And so here's what I have to say to you. What you just dropped was knowledge. You dropped so much knowledge that we have 2 minutes left before you have to go. I want you to tell the people where they can find you. Give them your ads, your Twitters, your link to your whatever you want to promote right now. Even if you want to promote what your other job is that you're leaving me for, but it's okay because it's fabulous. I want you to do that. and we're gonna let you go. All right, and go.
Thank you, my love. You can find me at www.legacyhealing.org, and I'll do my best to leave that in the comment section as well. And I do long distance Reiki sessions, card readings, etc., legacy planning sessions, which is kind of like life planning. And for those who are local, and should you be in the New Orleans area, definitely look me up. I'm also a yogi. My focus is bodies of all sizes, and I'm a burlesque dancer, so I teach that as well. What I'm running off to do right now is I just passed my tour guide test today
Yay!
in New Orleans. So I'm going to be in the quarter with the French Quarter Phantoms and telling ghost stories, some of which are very horrific because they are true, and we all know about. Maybe we don't all know about the history of New Orleans, but I've been encouraged. Thank you so much to Amy Weaver, strongly that my voice is very important as a Black woman, being the one to tell these stories.
Yes, 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 yes. Now, Malika, we want to wish you a farewell and a good night. You can sign off whenever you feel comfortable doing so. I'm going to stay on to give everybody my apps and information so they can reach out to me. I send you love and healing, and I hope you have a wonderful night in the square, my darling.
Thank you, my love. Good
Bye
night.
bye. Everyone, my name is Shaun Laveau. I am Psychic Shaun Laveau. This is my YouTube channel. Please subscribe if you are interested in watching more videos. Our next Hoodoo Q&A will be June 30th, and we will be having August midnight on the show. We will be discussing the connection between how to connect and communicate with the spirits of herbs, animals, and other spiritual curios. We will be discussing that for an hour and a half. You can find me on Facebook at Shaun Laveau. You can find me on Instagram at Shaun Laveau Psychic. You can find me on Facebook under my public figure page at Shaun Laveau Psychic as well. You can follow me on Twitter at Shaun Laveau Psychic. If you are looking for me, type in at Shaun Laveau Psychic and you'll probably find me. I want to send love, healing, and light to everyone that's watching this video. Let the light of the ancestors be always present in your life. Let it shine, let it shine and obliterate all negativity, all dark energies that would come forth to you, and let it provide wisdom and love when you need it the most. I am sending to you all ashe and blessings. Thank you so much for being part of this. Thank you so much for supporting me. Thank you so much for supporting my guests. Thank you again to my guests. And have a blessed night, everyone. Ashe, ashe, ashe.